The Baltic Sea, once a symbol of European cooperation, became a crime scene on September 26, 2022. This body of water, which had long been a conduit for trade, travel, and energy, was now the epicenter of a geopolitical crisis that would reverberate around the world. The serene waves of the Baltic were shattered by an act of sabotage that left the international community in shock and disbelief. Explosions ripped through the Nord Stream pipeline, sending shockwaves across the globe. The force of the blast was so powerful that it was detected by seismographs, registering as significant underwater tremors. These explosions were not just physical ruptures, they were symbolic of the fractures in international relations and the fragility of global energy security. These pipelines, carrying natural gas from Russia to Germany, lay in ruins. The Nord Stream pipelines had been a critical artery for energy, supplying Europe with much-needed natural gas. Their destruction not only disrupted the flow of energy, but also highlighted the vulnerabilities in the infrastructure that modern societies depend on. The environmental damage was significant, with methane gas spewing into the atmosphere. Methane, a potent greenhouse gas, has a far greater impact on global warming than carbon dioxide. The release of such a large quantity of methane into the atmosphere was a stark reminder of the environmental risks associated with fossil fuel infrastructure. The immediate aftermath saw a scramble to contain the leak and assess the long-term environmental impact. But the geopolitical implications were even more profound. The Nord Stream explosions were not just an environmental disaster, they were a geopolitical earthquake. The incident exacerbated existing tensions between Russia and the West, and it raised questions about the security of energy supplies in an increasingly unstable world. The reverberations of this event were felt in diplomatic circles, financial markets, and energy policies across the globe. This wasn't just an attack on infrastructure, it was an attack on the energy security of Europe. Energy security is a cornerstone of national security, and the Nord Stream explosions exposed just how vulnerable this critical sector can be. The incident underscored the need for countries to diversify their energy sources and to invest in the resilience of their energy infrastructure. The world watched in disbelief as investigations began. Teams of experts from various countries converged on the Baltic Sea to piece together what had happened. The investigation was a complex and painstaking process, involving underwater forensics, satellite imagery, and intelligence gathering. The stakes were high as the findings could have far-reaching implications for international relations and security. Who could have carried out such a brazen act? What were their motives? Speculation ran rampant, with fingers pointed in multiple directions. Some suspected state actors, while others considered the possibility of non-state actors or rogue elements. The motives were equally varied, ranging from economic gain to political leverage. The uncertainty and speculation only added to the tension and mistrust that had already been building. The Nord Stream attack was a stark reminder of the vulnerability of critical infrastructure in an increasingly volatile world. Modern societies rely on a vast network of infrastructure, from energy pipelines to communication networks, and these systems are often more fragile than we realize. The incident highlighted the need for greater investment in the protection and resilience of critical infrastructure. It also exposed the deep fissures and mistrust that had come to define relations between Russia and the West. The Nord Stream explosions were a flashpoint in a broader geopolitical struggle, one that had been simmering for years. The incident brought to the surface the underlying tensions and rivalries that had been shaping international relations, and it forced countries to confront the realities of a divided world. The question on everyone's mind was simple, yet daunting. Who was responsible? The search for answers was a global effort involving intelligence agencies, forensic experts, and diplomatic channels. The complexity of the investigation reflected the complexity of the geopolitical landscape, and the answers, when they came, were likely to reshape our understanding of international security and cooperation. The finger of blame was quickly pointed at Russia. Western leaders, already wary of Moscow's intentions following the invasion of Ukraine, saw the attack as a blatant act of aggression. The geopolitical landscape was already fraught with tension, and this incident only served to exacerbate the situation. The leaders of various Western nations convened emergency meetings, their faces etched with concern and determination. They were united in their condemnation, viewing the attack as a direct challenge to the stability and security of Europe. Accusations flew thick and fast, with each side presenting their own narrative. The Western media was quick to pick up on the story, broadcasting images of the damaged pipeline and speculating on the potential fallout. Analysts and experts were brought in to discuss the implications, with many agreeing that this was a significant escalation in the ongoing conflict. The narrative painted Russia as a rogue state, willing to go to any lengths to achieve its geopolitical goals. The idea that Russia would sabotage its own infrastructure seemed far-fetched to some, but to others, it was a calculated move designed to send a message. Painting Russia as a rogue state willing to sabotage critical infrastructure for geopolitical gain, the narrative was clear. Russia, desperate to exert pressure on Europe amidst mounting sanctions, had sabotaged its own pipeline. This theory gained traction quickly, with many pointing to Russia's previous actions as evidence of their willingness to engage in such tactics. The media coverage was relentless, with headlines screaming about the latest developments and pundits offering their opinions on what might happen next. The public, already on edge due to the ongoing conflict, was left wondering what this meant for the future. The theory that Russia had sabotaged its own pipeline was discussed at length. Officials from various countries weighed in, each offering their own perspective on the situation. Some believed that this was a desperate move by a country feeling the pressure of international sanctions, while others thought it was a strategic play designed to create chaos and uncertainty. The discussions were heated, with strong opinions on both sides. The idea that Russia would damage its own multi-billion-dollar investment seemed illogical to some, but to others, it was a clear sign of their willingness to do whatever it took to achieve their goals.
Moscow vehemently denied any involvement. Russian officials called the accusations absurd and predictable, pointing to the lack of concrete evidence. They argued that Russia had no motive to damage its own multi-billion-dollar investment, especially one crucial for supplying energy to Europe. The press conferences were tense, with Russian officials facing a barrage of questions from journalists. They maintained their innocence, insisting that they had nothing to gain from such an attack. The denials were firm and unwavering, but the accusations continued to fly. Pointing to the lack of concrete evidence, Russian officials argued that the accusations were based on speculation and not facts. They highlighted the importance of the pipeline to Russia's economy and questioned why they would jeopardize such a vital asset. The officials called for a thorough and impartial investigation, urging the international community to look at all possible angles before jumping to conclusions. They suggested that the real culprits were those who stood to benefit from the disruption of Russian gas supplies, hinting at other nations with vested interests in the region, especially one crucial for supplying energy to Europe. Instead, they suggested that the attack could have been orchestrated by those who stood to benefit from disrupting Russian gas supplies. The idea that other nations might be involved added another layer of complexity to the situation. Speculation ran rampant, with various theories being floated about who might be behind the attack. The possibility that the United States and its allies could be involved was a particularly contentious point, with some seeing it as a plausible scenario and others dismissing it as a conspiracy theory. Hinting at the United States and its allies, Russian officials suggested that the attack was a deliberate attempt to weaken Russia's position and create further instability in the region. This accusation was met with strong denials from the US and its allies, who insisted that they had no involvement in the attack. The back and forth between the two sides only served to heighten tensions, with each side accusing the other of deceit and manipulation. The international community watched closely, aware that the outcome of this situation could have far-reaching implications.
The blame game had begun, with each side digging in their heels and refusing to back down. The investigation into the attack was launched, with teams of experts analyzing the evidence and trying to piece together what had happened. The process was slow and painstaking, with every detail being scrutinized. The stakes were high, and the pressure to find answers was immense. The world watched as the investigation unfolded, hoping for a resolution that would bring clarity to the situation. Further deepening the chasm between Russia and the West, the incident highlighted the fragile nature of international relations. The tensions that had been simmering for years were now boiling over, with no clear path to resolution in sight. The future was uncertain, and the potential for further conflict loomed large. The world held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next in this high-stakes geopolitical drama.